Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we take a look back at an absolute masterpiece of the genre, which came out in the year 1981, a great year for horror movies, and that is the original Evil Dead. Written and directed by the great Sam Raimi, who went on to direct the famed Spider-Man trilogy, 1, 2, and unfortunately 3. He also went on to make some great movies outside the horror genre, like A Simple Plan, and of course The Gift, starring Cate Blanchett. Check that movie out if you haven't already. So the one that started it all, the original Evil Dead, starring the legendary Bruce Campbell, if you will, as Ashley Williams. His friends call him Ash. So Ash and his buddies go out to a secluded cabin in the woods, which became such a horror trope, of course, later on. They even made a movie making fun of all those movies called Cabin in the Woods. Where they go out to the rickety-ass bridge to get there, and that scene's funny as hell at the beginning when they drive over the rickety-ass bridge with a big sign, "Enter at your own risk, beware." And Ash is like, "Don't worry, no problem, this thing's made of stone." And of course the wood breaks apart and the tire falls through it, and you see him look over with this goofy look on his face. Gotta say, there's not a lot of comedy in this movie like there is in some of the later sequels and of course the TV show. This one is pretty much straight up horror in your face at all times. There's not a lot of comedy and silliness in this movie, but there's a little bit. So Ash Williams and his girlfriend Linda, his sister Cheryl, his buddy Scotty, and his girlfriend Shelly all get together to go to the cabin in the woods. And we start seeing some of that weird camera work, those POV shots, and you start hearing voices in the woods, and it looks like some kind of entity is coming at them. Which I love the camera work, by the way. That's what makes this movie so great, is the brilliant camera work of Sam Raimi and the cinematography of it. Those weird POV shots where you see the trees falling down. It looks like something's really coming at you. You can't tell if there's a person walking or if there's just an evil spirit out there. So when they get in the cabin, they find it's all rickety and beat up and spider webs everywhere, cobwebs, and it's all messed up. And they find this audio recorder, this, one of those huge old radios with it looks almost like a projector, but it's an audio recording. So they hit play on the recorder, and we hear this archaeologist talking about his research on this book. It's an ancient Sumerian book called the Naturam de Manto, an ancient Sumerian book. And then he talks about how it releases the spirits of the dead, the evil dead, if you will. And if you recite passages from the book, you will actually release the spirits, the deadites. And of course, he starts saying in the recording the passages from the book, and guess what happens? Just from the recording, you start seeing the fog come out of the woods, and the trees are coming to life, and you really start seeing the entity out in the woods going nuts, knocking trees over and stuff. And we first get sight of Cheryl when she's drawing a sketch in her sketchbook, and something gets a hold of her and makes her draw this drawing of a book with the weird face on it, that evil face that's on the Book of the Dead itself. So weird stuff starts happening like that. And then we see Cheryl a little bit later on. She hears some stuff outside in the woods. She starts hearing all the entities in the woods. So she goes out to check on it. And the woods start coming to life and start attacking her. And the vines start wrapping around her arms and around her legs, and they trip her, and they pull her out, and they start like ripping her clothes off, and she actually gets raped by the woods. It's really messed up. I don't know how they got away with that scene, but it's pretty intense, and it's really scary and horrifying. But she does manage to get away, and she runs away, and she goes back to the cabin in the woods, and there's like a scene straight out of Halloween. It's awesome. With the keys. When she goes to the door, she grabs the keys, and then you can see the evil entity trying to get her, and she's calling out to Ash, help, and she's trying each key, and they don't work. Then she goes to the next one. It's classic. That scene is like straight out of Halloween. Don't tell me. But she does get in. Ash pulls her in, and she starts going nuts, telling her about what happened. And Ash is like, "What are you talking about? The woods can't attack people." But that's exactly what they do. And apparently, her getting in that door released the evil spirit inside, which actually possessed Cheryl. So Cheryl is the first one to go. So you start seeing her float in the air, and she's got this weird deep voice, similar to like Regan in The Exorcist, which I'm amazed with their minuscule budget of only $90,000 they were able to make these crazy voices and the crazy gore effects and the great music, the great soundtrack, and all that great camera work on such a minuscule budget. That's why I feel this is one of the greatest independent movies ever made. But yeah, as you see her floating around the air, and she's talking in that real demonic voice, "We're going to get you," you know. So they beat her up, and they kick her down to the cellar. And they lock her in the cellar with chains and stuff, and you see her head keep popping up. "Ah, we're gonna get you." And that demonic voice. So yeah, one by one, the evil spirits start demonically possessing the individuals. Ash's friends, and Ash's girlfriend becomes a victim. So he has to take her out, and but they start to trick him. They start to trick Ash by turning back into their human selves. Next time you see her, she's perfect with no crazy makeup or anything, and she's beautiful again. And she starts saying, "Ash, don't hurt me. I love you," you know. And then you see her. And then you see his sister Cheryl in the basement doing the same thing. She's back to the "Ash, let me out, please. I'm okay now. I'm okay." You know damn well she's not okay. But yeah, they keep trying to trick her. The evil deadites, if you will, keep trying to trick her, Ash. And of course, he has to eventually take care of his own girlfriend. That becomes a heartbreaking scene. You know, he takes her out and buries her. And of course, once he does that, she comes to life, you know. She comes back to life. And she actually launches up at him, and he takes the shovel and whacks her head right off. And you see her head lying on the ground, and her head's still talking. Her head's still talking, like "ah," you know. It's awesome. And we see a little cameo appearance by the famed chainsaw that we've come to know Ash and love him because of that chainsaw. The chainsaw only makes a cameo though, but it's bright red and perfect, you know. And so he has to take his girlfriend out, and it becomes real hard for him, you know. But he does what he has to do because he's Ash. He's the badass Evil Dead killer. And we all know him. We all love him. We love this franchise. And this movie is absolutely incredible. Like I said, to me, this is one of the greatest independent movies ever made. It's one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It's just absolutely thrilling what they did in only 85 minutes runtime. Now take that into note, Hollywood. Stop making 2.5-hour movies that are boring as hell. Look what Evil Dead did with only 85 minutes of runtime, and you feel like you've been through an absolute epic of horror. And I mean, come on, people. Does Transformers need to be 2.5 hours long? Come on. So take notice, Hollywood, and look at the Evil Dead as a great reference of how to make an excellent movie, a scary movie, and a just amazing experience in film altogether. Thank you, folks, for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.